I got a brand new voice here on the program that is joining me from the city that I am in. Mark Fenner is here. He is with the group called Rise Up Performance Group, and I wanted to talk about something I posted on Facebook. This was about a week or so ago, and it's gotten over 150 responses to this. Why do you think some people just don't give trucking a chance? And let me set this up. You guys know that the Recruiting and Retention Conference has been underway in the great city of Nashville. There have been more than 300 plus trucking companies that have been in attendance, and they're talking to drivers. They are holding strategy meetings, trying to figure out what are some of the best ways to bring drivers in, and then in turn keep those drivers in those seats. And retention and recruiting has been a big topic of discussion. Now, during the course of the convention, I've been talking with a number of folks by phone about some of the things going on, and I did get a chance to talk to a very senior level trucking industry executive who told me point blank that they are seeing people from the driver's side to the office side simply just get up and leave without notice. I mean, up and gone, no notice, they're out of there. They disappear. While some say that they will take a job, many simply also don't show up, and they vanish into thin air. And one of the questions that he brought up to me, and I'm not going to reveal the guy's name, he wanted to keep it private, but one of the questions he did bring up is that why do many people just don't give trucking a chance? I mean, why do you think some people just don't give the trucking industry a chance, and how do you teach somebody brand new to give it a chance? And Mark Fenner is on board, and his group, Performance Group, looks at issues like this. They encourage companies to develop new ways, innovative strategies to bring people in and keep them in. And Mark, I want to welcome you to the program. You are live across North America for this Friday, sir. How are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. Yourself?
I appreciate you joining me on the program. And you and I are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but the great thing about technology, this thing is going all over the planet. I mean, just about it's everywhere. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me to talk about what's going on with people overall. But since you are a brand new voice on the program, tell folks a little bit about Performance Group, the Rise Up Performance Group. How did it get started? What do you guys do? And welcome on board.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, it's actually Rise Performance Group. I started it in 2011 as a way to help people. I believe that workplaces should be a place that's got purpose and that you can grow and that you can, do work. You can find meaning in your work, and a lot of companies are missing the boat on that. And so I really started with the mission that I have today, and that's to help people become more so they can achieve more, so they can ultimately give more.
When you talk about giving more, we're talking about if somebody feels connected with an organization like a trucking company, for example, when they feel like they are part of it, they're going to go that extra mile, aren't they, right? They're going to step up and say, you know what, I'll do that extra job. I may not get compensated for it, but maybe down the road it's going to pay dividends ultimately. What do you think?
That's right. That's right. We call that employee engagement, and that means that you're intellectually and emotionally committed to your work. And the opposite side of that is disengagement, which means you're not emotionally or intellectually committed to your work. And the person that's disengaged just kind of does the minimum, or sometimes they do even less than the minimum that it takes to get by. And companies today, it's a competitive market out there. Disruption and technology is transforming how things get done. And we need, as companies, our employees engaged to help us solve the problems that our customers are feeling and that we need to understand so that we can better compete in the marketplace.
Now, take this a step further and talk about what you are seeing with other types of industries. And the industry that you are talking with right now is mainly the trucking industry, the supply chain, warehousing, aviation, maritime, and things like that. And I've heard this before, that sometimes people just up and go. They just up and go, and the last thing you see of them is their taillights when they're pulling out of the parking lot. Do a lot of people maybe just take jobs for granted and say, you know what, this isn't going to fit me, and why bother giving notice? I'm out the door. Do you find that going on in other industries as well?
Yeah. We really do. I mean, this ghosting is really it's really a problem, and I think it's driven by a couple of factors, Mark. I think number one, jobs are plentiful. You know, I tell my clients the war for talent's over and talent's won, and so they really need to create a unique and valuable brand to attract people to their organization and engage them and keep them there. And then number two, you know, I just think there is a general diminishing of the respect level for returning calls, for taking calls, for communicating with people. And it used to be when your phone rang, you didn't know who was calling, so you picked it up. Well, Today you screen it and you say, well, I don't know if I want to talk to that person, or, you know, I don't know if I want to hire that person. I don't want to have that discussion right now. So you send them the voicemail.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing it on both sides. I mean, I'm seeing the ghosting where employees don't show up or vanish.
Yeah.
But I'm seeing employers also not showing the respect when people are interviewing. So we're kind of getting what we're modeling, you know, as leaders.
I would think, Mark, that's got to be very concerning from the business model standpoint, because if a company is going to be looking at, say, a driver or any individual as simply a churn, you know, get them in, and if they leave, so what? I mean, I would think that eventually the marketplace is going to catch up to that, because customers want some kind of reassurance, working with familiar voices, familiar faces out there, not a revolving door situation. Does that burn a lot of people out?
Oh, absolutely. Retention of employees is just a top priority for almost every client that I work with. And so companies that get it, you know, they want to hang on to their people. They want to create an environment that attracts top performers to do the work. They want to be intentional about getting them engaged so they feel a part of the team. They feel the love of the culture. They feel special. They feel respected. Mm-hmm. They feel valued. And then they want to manage them over time in a way that earns loyalty, where that employee wants to stick with them over the long haul. The reference that I was making is oftentimes during the interviewing process, you know, people aren't getting back. And it's not just in the hiring, but it's, you know, when I grew up as a kid, I had to learn to play with the people in my neighborhood. And if I didn't have any friends to play with. Well, today, the younger generation, you know, you can get on social media and find a niche, or you can go hang out in your bedroom on social media and feel connected. And I think as a culture, we're missing a little bit of the communication skills and the people skills. And I think that's what's leading to some of this ghosting.
Drivers, jump in. Would love to get your thoughts on this conversation with Mark Fenner. He is with the group called Rise Up Performance Group, and we're going to talk about why people just up and go, and many that do say come into the trucking industry, they don't stick around long. And that has been one of the major topics of discussion at the Retention and Recruiting Conference underway this week in Nashville. We have got hundreds of trucking companies are there trying to talk about and figure out this very thing. So why do you think some people don't give trucking a chance, and how do you teach somebody new to give it a chance? And Mark, I posted this statement up on Facebook, up on my social media site. It's on Facebook, All News All the Time, SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking News. I'm going to read some of the comments that I've gotten from a lot of people. Tiffany Sand wrote, I think it's a very demanding field and people are unwilling to put the time and the effort into doing a good job. I like my job, but basically I'm on call 24/7. It is demanding. Ryan Walsh wrote in that when the majority of dispatchers are bullies that play games with drivers' CDLs, it gets old, make the dispatchers liable for drivers' fines and fees, and see how quickly they chill out. Dennis Donovan wrote in, it's a horrible industry, unskilled labor makes for companies not caring about the driver turnover. It's also it's not a job, it's a lifestyle for the over-the-road drivers. I would never recommend driving to anybody. Do you hear similar comments in other industries like that people maybe are just burned out, or there seems to be maybe a disconnect between the office management and those that are on the front line? Could be the shop warehouse floor. It could be behind the trucking wheel for the driver out there. Talk about that, if you will. What do you think?
Yeah, Mark, I think you're hitting on a key point. You know, companies think about building their brand to attract customers, and the great companies think about building an employee brand to attract the kind of workers that they want. And a good brand focuses in on a niche. Who are the unique people with problems that we are uniquely qualified or positioned to solve?
Right.
And so the same thing plays in recruiting and developing your brand in a way that it attracts the right people. Trucking, as in many other jobs, is not for everybody, but guess what? It's probably for the right people. And if you can understand, what am I bringing? I love the comment about it being a lifestyle. To me, that appeals. There's a certain class of people out there that would probably really value that lifestyle.
Sure.
And how can trucking organizations better find them and get the trucking opportunity in front of them so they understand what it's about, the value of it, the good things that come with being a trucker, and so that you can uniquely appeal to them.
Let's go to the phones. We've got a number of folks who want to weigh in on this, Mark. And drivers, again, the phone number to call into the program, it's 888-876-2336 or 8888 Road Dog. Mark, before we go to the calls, I do want to get your website out for Rise Up social media. Are you on Twitter? How can folks reach out to you directly?
Yeah, the best way to get to me is to go to my website. That's riseperformancegroup.com.
Okay, very good. And the phone numbers are up on that as well?
Yeah, but I can give it to you here if you want it. It's 972-342-5870.
Very good,
Welcome
sir.
to
All right, let's go to the phones. First up, we got Michael in the state of Texas. Michael, I want to welcome you to the program, man. Why do you think folks aren't giving trucking a chance these days?
I'd like to start off by saying good afternoon.
Hey.
For you. But I would like to start with say, trucking management is the problem. In Nashville, coming up with strategy, it's really no strategy in trucking. Give these drivers a living wage, treat them with respect, and get them home. The problem with trucking management, they don't listen at the drivers. They have to change their business model all the way up 120 degrees. And I'm only talking about trucking management. This don't have nothing to do with the LTL model because they don't have these problems.
Yeah.
They can't hold on to the drivers. They are talking about incentives. These drivers and people is tired of hearing about incentives. Just pay me.
Yeah.
That's all they have to do is pay the driver.
Simple solution, write a check. Simple solution, write a check,
right.
Michael. Right?
Write a check.
Yeah.
Write a check. You right. And another thing, I am so sick of them complaining about a driver shortage. I find it kind of sad that you have the ATA that represent the major carriers. They have to go to 18-year-olds. They are so sad they can't employ, mature people. They have to stoop to low levels like that. Mature people, if they can hire mature people, pay them, maintain them, they won't have to look at 18-year-old kids to bring them out on the road to fill the seats of their trucks. Trucking management, this goes down to them, shippers and receivers. Why would you want to come out here and be abused? And shippers and receivers waiting 4 and 5 hours to get unloaded.
Michael, I appreciate it. I do have to go to a break here, but Mark, he's referring to a very common situation where a lot of the drivers that are going in to, say, a shipper or a consignee, maybe to pick up or drop off freight, they're often told they got to wait for an extended period of time because the shippers aren't ready for them to come in and take care of the business they need to take care of for whatever reason. But the whole idea of detention time that doesn't start until 2 hours after the driver arrives. And so the driver's pretty much sitting there, not making any money over the course of that 2 hour period. And Michael's stating that, if you cover the driver's expenses, pay them for every minute that they're worth, that they're out there on the road, pay them what they're worth, and maybe that would cut down of some of the amount of people that are saying, you know what, I'm out of here. I can't work for free. How do you build that bridge back, in other words, where companies are recognizing that the driver's time is absolutely the most important thing out there? What do you say?
Gosh, I can only imagine how frustrating that must be as a driver to be sitting there waiting and not being compensated for that time. And they're away from their families and they're out, working hard and doing the best they can and not being paid for that. These are difficult challenges that of course takes place in trucking and takes place in other industries as well. And I think what management can do, I think what I have found works is to listen and to seek for solutions. And I talked earlier about the importance of retention, and retention is important because you get good people like the gentleman who called in that have ideas of how to solve these problems and engage your workforce in helping you try different solutions. And a lot of my clients will get together. In fact, over the last couple months, I've been going around to my clients, meeting with individuals like the one who called in and facilitating discussions where we take the biggest problems that the company's dealing with. What frustrates? How can we anti-frustrate? So what is the burr in your saddle? What's the pebble in your shoe? And how can we as a team brainstorm ideas to solve that problem? And then let's go try them and see if we can get some of them to work and materialize.
And take that a step further, too, because I've got to imagine if you are the president, CEO, you are the boss of a company, how would you not know those problems? I mean, am I just looking at that in a vacuum? But I would think that if you're in that carpeted office and you are making decisions, how would somebody not know that? I mean, am I missing a point there, or what do you think?
Well, it's interesting you ask that question. There's a guy here that they know the problem. Okay, they know the problem. But what happens sometimes is we just in our minds, leaders will just say that's just the way it is. That's just how our business is. And you know what? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know enough in this case, but I know I heard a guy speak. We're both in Dallas. He runs driverselect.com over off 75.
Oh, sure.
And he told me that he recognizes this issue with the truckers that deliver cars to his lot. And if he can't get them in and out, he has built a special room where they've got soft drinks, they've got snacks, they do everything in their power to make that driver feel great about delivering automobiles to his dealership. And that's just one example, but that's the kind of mindset that we're trying to convey. That's the mindset that we're trying to get people to adopt, that we've got to respect. This is back to ghosting, right? If your driver doesn't feel respected, if he doesn't feel heard, if he doesn't feel valued, and I'm not saying he would do this, but a lot of other people are like, well, heck with it. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And why do I even need to tell them? If they're not going to listen to me, why do I need to put the extra effort in to communicate to them?
I've got a break here,
so
Mark.
It starts with listening. Not that we can solve every problem, but let's open up some dialogue, because a lot of the great answers come from people like your driver who just called in.
Well, I think, too, this could also maybe be broken down into like 4 distinct areas. Like maybe some of the reasons why people are leaving, it could be maybe impatience with their peers, disillusionment with the job, maybe dissatisfaction with some of the achievements that they've seen on the job. We'll go into more of that in just a minute, Mark. I do have to break for some commercials, weather, and traffic, and we got a lot of folks that are going to be calling in and getting on. Master Sergeant 117 in Maryland's coming up. Stephen in Louisiana. Brian in Iowa, the historian. That's a great handle in Ontario. He's going to be coming up as well. Guys, ladies, jump in. You're always welcome. to join me on the program. Mark Fenner with the Rise Performance Group is here, and we're talking about why do you think some people just don't give trucking a chance? How do you teach somebody new to stick with it, to give it a chance? Let me update the weather now, 26 after, right here on SiriusXM.
And now a look at traffic and weather on SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking News.
Drivers, this weather update is going to be brought to you by J.B. Hunt. And let's get right to it. You know, for this weekend, if you are traveling around Montreal, down to Boston, Philadelphia, Syracuse, Detroit, I heard from a listener this morning through Facebook that he's in Detroit, brought a story idea to me. Chicago, Indianapolis, it is going to be about 15 degrees above normal. How about that? What a nice change of pace for that area. Montreal, Boston, Philly, Syracuse, Detroit, Indianapolis, and then down to Chicago. Enjoy that because I know many of you that are in those areas have been just absolutely snow-bombed by all the snowfall activity that has been going on through there. All right, I'm going to break here for a few minutes. I've got a news update coming up as well. So stay tuned. More coming up next. I'm Mark Willis, live across North America, Sirius XM 146.
If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. This is Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
Road Dog Trucking Radio. News break.
Live and nationwide.
Hey drivers, live across North America. It is the bottom of the hour, time for a news update, and this update is going to be brought to you by Carrier 360 by J.B. Hunt. All right, this is one of the most fun times of the week for me, Friday, and that means I get to bring on board Tim Dooner. He is with Freight Waves, and I do want to point out, ladies and gentlemen, they've got a great show that is on every Saturday right here on SiriusXM, channel 146 from 3 to 5 Eastern. And Tim, it's really good to talk with you. You know, I'm looking at the Freight Waves website, simply just freightwaves.com. There is a tremendous amount of information up on that site. I'm looking at some information about the coronavirus, top stories, and things like that. Man, this is a beauty. A lot of stuff going on that website. Welcome back, man.
Hey, how's it going? I think the biggest story that, in terms of just analytics and response and interest over the past 24 hours has probably been the Keep Trucking story, right? Closing down One Point Logistics and opening up their load board to the general freight public is their plan, they say.
Yeah, that's a great story when you look at how the industry is really changing. When you look at how things are moving along at a great clip out there, do you think we're going to see more consolidation, more streamlining of things like that, like you're mentioning? Is that going to be the wave going forward here?
Well, you know what? What makes the real wrinkle in this Keep Trucking story, and we on What the Truck, our other show, we just had one of the employees at One Point Logistics on. He was telling us his inside tale, but they bought One Point Logistics just over a year ago in April of 2019, sorry, just under a year ago. And, they brought people in. They were building out the office. They were growing for a while out there. And then rather abruptly, they just shut the whole thing down yesterday at noon. So they say that it's because they wanted to run a more neutral load board, and they say that it's, maybe the venture money's not as interested in brokerages at the moment. But it's been interesting look for those kind of stories, right? We also heard about Knight Swift, who's going to their partnership, a truck stop that they're going into for Book It Now.
Looking at this also, too, I'm looking at some info in the article that you got up on the website that venture capitalist investors, are they becoming more risk-averse and sensitive to valuation, reemphasizing unit economics, gross margins? In other words, what are they looking at from that standpoint?
I think they are. I think there's been a tightening of the belt, especially in 2020, and the way that they look at companies. I mean, Craig Fuller here is kind of big on the theory that WeWork was sort of the precursor that made people want to look a little deeper at the books and see some of these returns. I mean, for a while, it was just that, there was more investors than there were companies, so you were able to see some crazy valuations out there. But I think that, now the boards are looking at this and they're saying, hey, we want to see a return on investment, just like in any business.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about the competitive landscape of the trucking industry. I mean, looking at from what's going on with the story that you've got up about Keep Trucking, shuttering One Point Logistics, and then bringing smart load board information to the marketplace. This is going to be, I think, an industry that's going to continue to be driven by big data. There's going to be big data coming in. It's going to dictate just how the industry is moving forward here, right? More emphasis on technology, in other words.
I mean, it could be, but I mean, if you look at some of these venture companies, right, and if they open the books at the wrong time, which right now to have a brokerage is the wrong time to have your books looked at, because as our research team recently published, fourth quarter earnings for brokerages were down 22.4% on average year over year. That's quite significant. And when companies look at that stuff, I don't know how deep they go into these metrics, and instead they say cut the burn, right? So if you are Keep Trucking, they were a freight unicorn. They're looking for some more money. And then an investor says, well, great, but why do you have this money soak that's a brokerage attached to you? It's a tough time to run that type of business.
Yeah, no, goodness sakes, absolutely. Now, and I'm sure you guys are going to be going over all of this coming up on the Saturday show, correct? Starting at 3 Eastern.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to Truck Stop on there. We also have Andrew Leto from Emerge. He's the guy who started Global Trans, looking at listings on eBay, and then eventually sold it for $400 million. He also started 10-4 and sold that. Now he's got Emerge, so he knows a lot about this space.
Wow.
He's got a great story about how a book changed his life, Think and Grow Rich, and we're going to get deep on that one. And plus, Ingrid Brown, she's a trucker, cancer survivor, going to talk about her story and spread some awareness for drivers out there.
She's a great lady, and wish her all the best. I've talked with her before on the radio, and you got a great lineup coming up this Saturday. Tim, thank you, man, for joining me on the program. And again, that is Tim Dooner, and you got to tune in to their great show, Freightwaves. Simply go to freightwaves.com and check out all the great stuff. And right out front and center, you'll see that story about Keep Trucking shuttering One Point Logistics, basically bringing smart load board to the market. So we'll talk more about that later. Thanks to him for joining me. I got a break here for a few minutes. Stay tuned. More coming up on SiriusXM 146.
You're listening to Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis on SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking Radio. Now, back to Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis on SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking Radio.
Hey, drivers, across North America, phone over to call into the program. It's 888-876-2336. All right, let's go right back to the phone lines. And if you are just now joining me on the show, I am talking with a brand new voice on the program, Mark Fenner. He is with the Rise Performance Group, and one of his jobs is to work with companies to try to go over and review and help companies out become more engaged with their workforce. And I mentioned earlier on in the program that I talked with a senior level trucking industry executive who told me that they're seeing a lot of folks from the driver's side to the office side simply just go. They leave without any notice. Some just disappear out of the blue. You might see them in their taillights when they go down the road, while some are saying that they're going to take a job. Many don't show up. And a lot of people are saying there's a lot of reasons for that. And a lot of folks weighed in on social media with the question I brought up: why do you think some people just don't want to give trucking a chance? Why do they just get up and go? And why do you think they just don't show up? What do you teach someone? How do you convince somebody brand new to give the industry a chance? Mark, thanks, man. Let's go to Master Sergeant 117 first up. Sir, welcome. You're on with Mark. What do you think about that? What do you say to somebody to give it a chance? Just don't run out the door after 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah. I understand some of these.
Oop. All right, Master Sergeant, I appreciate you. I think I might have. All right, let me bring him back. There he is. All right. What do you think about that, Master Sergeant, from the standpoint of why some folks just not either they just don't show, or they're simply just going to, maybe give it 2-3 weeks and then they're out the door? What are your thoughts?
Because number one, they don't think what this involves. Oh, you go out, you come back. You go out, you come back. They don't know. Nobody tells them
how it really is out here.
Yeah.
You're going to be gone for 2 or 3 weeks, maybe up to a month, before you see the house. All right? Nobody tells them that. They don't tell them that, you're going to be going in places where a truck should not belong.
Yeah.
All right? All right? And detention time, the 2 hours to 3 hours before you get detention time. Yeah, I agree that you should be paid something from the time you stop that truck.
Yeah.
Pick up that load. But they don't tell them. They don't tell them that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Mr. Sergeant. Thanks. And Mark, that is very common, where many companies have that expectation where the driver's got to sit and wait, not get paid, and many just don't tell the driver until the first time it goes around. Then the driver is able to figure that out. And again, it gets down to that transparency from the get-go. If you've got transparency from the starting gate, I think that's going to really go a long way in helping retain the people that are working for the organization. Could be any industry, right? But you got to be transparent up front.
Yeah, I think it's a trust killer, right? I mean, trust builds when the experience meets the expectation, and trust diminishes when the experience is short of the expectation. So we work with companies to really help them think about the onboarding process and how can we hire in a way that gives us a chance to exceed the perception that the new employee has when they start with the company. And your last caller just gave a great example of how frustrating and disappointing that is. And it creates a lack of trust that lingers really from that point forward that's very hard to overcome.
And in a lot of cases, right, it's never overcome, right? That you really cannot build that bridge back, I would imagine, in many cases like that.
Yeah, so what happens is you start looking, people, our natural tendency is to be cynical anyway, and so you start looking at things through the lens of what's wrong instead of what's right, and it just creates this cycle that's just so doggone hard to break if you don't get started off on the right foot.
Let's keep going, Mark. A lot of folks want to get on board. Next up, we've got the historian who's on the phone. I appreciate you calling in, man. I just got your Facebook message, but why do you think some people just get antsy and they go after about 2 or 3 weeks? They really don't give things a chance out there.
My opinion is that a lot of drivers, and it's a lot of new drivers in my opinion, that don't know how to ask the questions. Like when they get on with a new carrier, they don't know what questions to ask the recruiters or ask the company or ask other drivers. So with that being said, like I learned a long time ago to ask questions of the carrier, like what your pay, like what the pay is, what layover, like you would ask all the questions that you would have going into a company. So you can kind of have your mind expand, like you can have more knowledge of what the company's about.
Yeah, and great point.
With that being said, like detention time, if carriers were to start, like if instead of 2 hours sitting there, if they were to say to the shipper receiver, we're going to start charging you after, let's say, 30 minutes at a rate that would get these guys to move, then we wouldn't be there for 2, 3, 4, 12 hours or whatever. And a lot of times I feel that shippers and receivers take advantage of the carriers because they know that we can get held up the driver can get held up for a certain amount of time.
That's another great point, the historian. Thank you for that. And let me ask you that as well, Mark. He's brought up a great point about just folks not just knowing what questions to maybe to bring up. And I think the marketplace might also play a factor in this, because if a company is small enough and they've got maybe 2 or 3 really top clients, they don't want to get that client base mad in this economy because they could lose the benefit of a contract, I guess. Is this kind of walking a tightrope as far as small companies are concerned? They might not have the same leverage as some of the bigger companies out there.
Well, I think that's a great point, but I think the bigger issue is there is no panacea out there. So every job has pros and cons. I mean, you and I live in Dallas, and I use this example a lot. It's a great city, but our traffic here is horrible.
Yeah, no
if
question.
somebody's going to relocate from Des Moines, Iowa, down here to Dallas, and you're not upfront about what a commute can be like in Dallas,
oh yeah,
then you're going to run the risk. They're going to move here, and they're going to think, man, this city's horrible. On the other hand, if you up front say, the traffic, listen, your traffic's going to be difficult down here, but let me tell you about all the great things in Dallas.
yeah,
And these are the reasons why we love it, even though the traffic, some people can complain about the traffic. And you reframe it and get your potential candidate focused on what's positive instead of what's negative.
yeah.
So what great companies do, and what your trucking managers might think about, is why not have a website that says, here are great questions to ask during the interview
Right.
to help prepare them, and then you think through how are we being proactive in dealing with this, and if it's like traffic, if it's something you don't have enough, that you really don't have a lot of control over. So what are the great things that we do to compensate for you as a driver, even though this is a challenge, and be prepared to have that discussion during the interview.
Yeah.
Rather than having it be a surprise when they start.
You mentioned compensate for the driver out there. I'm really reading a quote from William Jenkins on Facebook. He said the bottom line is Benjamin's. He said when you look down and say, I don't get paid enough to put up with all of this, and they come to management and tell you, and you just shrug your shoulders before you get into your BMW or your Lexus, quoting, you are the problem, Hoss, and that's why the oil field workers, well, or doesn't, you either get paid well or you are going to walk out. And I think it goes back to one of the first callers, Mark, that Michael mentioned, that it's a question of how much are you willing to write. But a lot of the question about how much are you willing to write as far as a check goes, it's going to be dependent upon the certain market conditions, on the size of the company. Company may not be able to write a huge check, but if they tell the people up front what's going on, then maybe that will kind of cushion the blow a little bit and help in the retention, or maybe the recruiting, the retention process through that whole situation. Interesting conversation. I've got to break one more time, Mark, for some weather. Brian's coming up in Iowa. Then let's see, Stephen in Louisiana. I'm going to try to get you two guys on, so you want to stick around on the phone with me. I've got Mark Fenner, brand new voice here on the program, and we're talking about human beings out there. What makes people tick? Why do you think some people don't give trucking a chance? Let me update the weather now. 50 minutes on the nose right here on SiriusXM.
This is Road Dog Trucking News, traffic, and weather on SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking Radio.
All right, let's get right to it, ladies and gentlemen. I mentioned the storm activity that has been occurring in some parts of the Midwest. The cold weather settling in the Midwest and Northeast this week would normally go unnoticed by the second half of February. But amid this winter's unusually mild weather, it still stands out and still commands some respect for those who must still work outdoors for any length of time. I mentioned that big traffic disaster in Montreal. Wednesday morning, there was a 200-vehicle pileup due to a squall line that moved through, and that created whiteout conditions. 200 vehicles involved with that, and unfortunately 2 people lost their life, and more than 100 others were transported to area hospitals. I've got a break here for a few minutes, and I'm going to come back on the other side. Brian in Iowa, Stephen in Louisiana. Got you guys coming up next. Stay tuned. I'm Mark Willis right here on Sirius XM 146.
If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. This is Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis. If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. Back to Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
I mentioned early on, guys, that the Retention and Recruiting Conference has been underway for a good portion of this week, and more than 300 trucking companies have been out about trying to figure out a way to improve the process where they can bring new drivers in and retain the ones that are currently in seats driving trucks. And you guys heard the stories about the turnovers and things like that, and a lot of people are asking, Why don't people just give trucking a chance instead of just leaving after about 2 months or 3 months, and some just don't show up? How do you teach somebody new to give it a chance? Really great calls into the program. Mark Fenner's on. Let's go to Brian in Iowa, who's going to be next. Brian, what do you think, man? Hey, Brian, welcome to the program. All right, let's go to Stephen, who's going to be next up in Louisiana. Hey, Stephen, welcome to the program, man. Why do you think people just don't give trucking a chance? What do you think?
Well, my comment's more about the ghosting issue, and I guess it would come around to not giving it a chance either. I'm going to say that 80% of the ghosting problem that you have in the trucking industry falls into the laps of the recruiters. The recruiters will tell you anything you want to hear to get you in that seat. They'll promise you the world. They'll tell you you'll drive a brand new truck. You'll get $1,500 a week guaranteed and everything that you want to hear. And then you get over there and you find out that it's the top 3 or 5% of the people in the company that's actually getting what the recruiter promised, and he's basing his speculations off of that. And you get over there and you're driving an old truck. You're not making near what they promised. The benefits are so expensive or they're not available. And the people are out there busting their rear ends to do the job. They're not getting what they were promised up front. And they just say, okay, well, if they don't respect me enough to live up to the promises, why even bother telling them anything? Just bring the truck to the yard and park it, clean it out, go home.
All right, Stephen,
and it goes back to what Master Sergeant 1 said. It's just, maybe not him, it was the other one, about asking questions. Yeah,
that was Michael, but I appreciate it, Stephen. I'm almost out of time of the program, and Mark, as we get ready to wrap up, I've got about a minute and a half left. Man, it's a transparency here because there sounds like there is a huge disconnect as to what's presented and what actually goes on between management and those that are signing on to the job. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it gets back to under-promise and over-deliver and setting the proper expectations up front. I mean, it's just it's such a short-sighted ball game. And, getting recruiting on board, in alignment with onboarding and what the job is really about. I'm telling you, great companies are putting a lot of focus on that because, like Steven said, once that trust is damaged, I mean, you just can't repair it. And this turnover it's not fair to the truckers and it's not fair to the company either. I mean, that's a big problem that hopefully somebody will be inspired on this call to take action for their company and do a better job there.
All right, outstanding. Mark, thank you for spending the time with us. Before I let you go, let's get all of the web contact, social media, phone numbers. Where can folks reach you guys at your office directly?
Yeah, call us at 972-342-5870. They can reach us at riseperformancegroup.com. They can find me at Twitter at mark at rpg.com. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook under Rise Performance Group.
All right, very good, Mark. I'm going to leave it at that. Hour number 2. Straight ahead for you next time, Mark Willis on SiriusXM.